Hello dear students, welcome to this new session. In this session, you're going to learn how to draw shape blocks in isometric projection. We're also going to render these shape blocks, which we're going to discuss about later on in this video. So the learning objectives, you can read it below. Draw shape blocks in isometric projection on isometric grid, given the front view and depth, and also we have to render the shape blocks. Here we have 4 examples. These are the 4 examples which we are going to attempt during the session. And as you can see, the shape blocks, they differ from what we have drawn previously. We had drawn cubes and cuboids, and they were vertical cuboids and horizontal cuboids or rectangular prisms. They had a regular shape. But compared to those, the shape blocks, they have a particular shape. This is why they are called shaped blocks, because the blocks have a shape. For example, the first one, you see an L which is mirrored. You see example 2, which is the form of a T which has been inverted, and you have example 3, which is the form of a U, and finally you have example 4, which looks like a stair. How do we draw these? When you're given such a question, there are a few things that you have to look for. The first one is that you will be given this. This is the front view, okay? And then you'll be given this, which is the depth. And then you'll also be given this, which is the direction of the depth line. The length will be the horizontal distance and the height will be the vertical distance. In this case, the length is equal to 7, the height is equal to 7, and obviously the depth is 3. So the 7, 3 represent the number of squares here. But when we're going to draw it, we're going to draw it on the isometric grid. Be careful with that. This is not oblique projection. We're not going to repeat the steps in the previous videos. In order to make this drawing easy to draw, first of all, we have to add numbers to each of the corners that we have. In this one, we have 6 corners. It's like giving someone your address. So, where do you live? And they are going to give you address, because that is the particular location, and this is how we're going to locate these points. We're going to draw this, and we're going to draw the first example and the others also on the isometric grid. The isometric grid is different from the square grid, where here you find triangles instead of squares. Another very important feature when we draw isometric projection is that we have to take into consideration the isometric axis. As you are already aware from the previous video, that we have lines moving in 3 directions. This will be the height, and then we'll have this direction which will indicate either the length or the depth, and then we'll have also lines in this direction which will indicate either the depth or the length. Let's start drawing this object now. The length, height, depth of this object is 7, 7 and 3. I want you to follow here very carefully. This is very important, okay? We are going to use the image of the question which is given on the right, and then we are going to draw this object. You see that we have this arrow to the left here. This indicates the depth line, which is, as you can see here. Okay, you see this dot here. This dot we are going is here. We are going to call this point 4, and then we are going to start with point 4 on the isometric axis, you see here, and then we are going to label this point 4. Then the next point is point 3. This is point 3, and this indicates this is the direction for length, and we have point 3. We're going to move point 3 here. If you count the distance in terms of squares from point 4 up to point 3, then you'll have 7 squares in the horizontal direction. Here we are going to count the triangles in the horizontal triangle referring to the isometric axis. Once you have located these 2 points, we can draw a line here. So this line you see here is here. Next we have point number 2. Point number 2 is directly above point number 3, and it is at a distance of 7 squares. So here we are going to count 7 triangles upwards. Okay, so this is where 7 triangles upwards will look like. And then again we draw the line, and this line is here. Next we have point 1. When we move into this direction, this would still be the length. So length we still draw in this direction only. So this is where point 1 will be. And then again we draw the next line, and we can continue the object like this. So from the front view, we have been able to draw it on the isometric grid. Once we have drawn the front view on the isometric axis, we are going to shade it red using the color pencil. This is because when we are going to move the points, we will know which point is a hidden line and which point is a visible line. We'll start with the first point that we had moved previously was point 4. And as you see, point 4 we are moving it in this direction because the depth moves in that direction, and we are going to count 3 triangles because it is 3D. So we move point 2, we can move point 1, we can move point 5, we can move point 6, and we are going to draw the lines. You must have noticed that I did not move point 3. Do you know why? It is simply because when I have shaded this part, I know that the point 3, if I draw it, it will move through this red part. And since it is not a visible point and it moves through the red part, I know that I should not be drawing the line at point 3. It is as simple as that. Next, we have to complete the shape like this, and this is finally how you're going to add the different colors. And the front view will always be red. The top view you're going to shade it yellow, and the side view you're going to shade it blue. So the final drawing will look like this. It should have neat and crisp lines. The lines should be drawn on the grid, and it should be rendered very neatly. In example 2, we have been given the front view and also the depth, where the length is the horizontal distance and the height is also the vertical distance. The LHD for this object is 8, 6 and 2. So when we count this direction, we count the squares from this point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So it will be 8 squares in length. And again, and if we count vertically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, the height will be 6 squares. Let's draw this. We're going to add numbers just like we had done in the previous one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So this object has 8 corners. We are going to draw the isometric axis on our grid. This is how you draw the isometric axis on your grid. It should be a short one. Here we have the isometric axis which you are going to draw on your isometric grid. Once you have drawn this, we are going to start from the lowest point where we have been given the arrow. So when we are given the arrow to the left, the lowest point will be here. This will be our starting point, which we are going to label point 6. Okay, point 6 will be here, and then we have point 5 which will be here. This direction is the direction for length, and then we are going to draw the line which joins 6 to 5. And we have point 4 which is vertically above point 5, and it is at 2 squares. So on the isometric grid we are going to draw a line at 2 triangles, and it can get a bit tricky here because you see from point 4 we are moving to the left, but here we cannot move to the left like this. This direction represents the direction for length. From here the direction of length is like this. So from point 3 we can draw a line like this, and point 2 is vertically above point 3, and again we draw the line, and we have point 1, have point 8 and point 6. This is how this object looks in isometric. So the front view from the square grid will look like this in the isometric grid. Once we have drawn the front view, we are going to shade it red again, and then we are going to move the points in the direction of the depth line. We know that the depth is in this direction. You see that we have not moved point 3 and point 5. The same reason as I had mentioned earlier. If we draw the line here at point 3, it is going to move to the red part. Okay, same goes for point 5, and those lines are not visible since they move to the red part. This is why we are not going to draw them. Finally, we are going to join the different parts together, and we are going to shade it like this. The final object looks like this. We have reached the end of the first part. See you in the next one.